Call the meeting order. Please rise for a silent reflection and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have roll call check.
Mrs. Cynthia? Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Vorbach?
Here.
Mayor Mechanico?
Here. Please read the Public Meetings Act.
Pursuant to the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice, which has been filed in the office of the Borough Clerk, posted on the Borough website and here in the Municipal Building, published as a legal notice in the Co-Star newspaper, and mailed to those requesting notice and providing payment in accordance with Borough policy.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda with one addition. The resolution R 2014-184. This is a resolution appointing Public Works Department probationary employee.
I'll make that motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. We do have a new set of minutes, but that's for next meeting. So when you get a chance to look at those. No presentations, no public hearings. We move right to the public comment section. Where you may speak on any agenda item. You'd like to step forward, give your name and address, and you may speak on any agenda item. Seeing no hands, I need a motion to close.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On the discussion items, we have a few. We have Lake Drive right-of-way, Route 71 access permit. That's on block 73-401, I'm sorry, 4-02 subdivision. Stuart?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I remember meeting you at the
Yes.
planning board as well. Just give my appearance on behalf of the other council members. I'm Elizabeth Durkin, DUR, County, the Durkin firm. On behalf of the applicant, I represent Mr. Stewart for his application for a minor subdivision before the planning board on November 13th.
Stuart, you just tell us generally what you're asking me.
Sure. When we approached the planning board, we had gone in informally a couple of times and then filed a formal application for the development of lot 4.02. I have the property on the easel. That was the plan that was submitted to the planning board and approved at their November 13th hearing. We had discussed access to the property during that hearing, and the way we have the property configured and the way it was approved shows a private driveway coming in off Route 71 through the municipal right-of-way of Lake Drive, accessing the property. And we're here this evening to tell you about the project and to request authorization to use that right-of-way as a private driveway to access this property.
So it would be by way of the easement from the municipality to the property owners for access to their sites in conformity with the approval that was granted by the planning board.
Well, let me ask you a question. Now, as far as the council, if we do grant you this permission, what is your role as far as this driveway, that you call it, correct?
The driveway would be a private driveway that would be maintained by myself.
You fully maintain?
Fully maintain the driveway, yes.
That would include clearing the streets during snowstorms?
Yes.
What about garbage removal?
We discussed that at the planning board hearing, and it's my understanding that you provide a private type garbage pickup where you go house to house. This would be the similar situation where they would just drive down the driveway and access the garbage areas that would be located adjacent to the driveway.
Is it our people will be doing that?
Yeah, currently, we do offer back curb pickup. One thing to make mention, in the mayor already covered it when he talked about snow. During snow events, people are required to bring garbage out to the curb. We do not go over driveways due to injuries to, people on the driveway, we can't embank.
So the curb means Highway 71?
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
During snow events, we do not collect garbage rear yard pickup. It's suspended for snow events.
Okay.
Because of possible injuries, because not everyone shovels their driveways or side or entry walks, so you're required to bring it to the yard.
Okay, so same is true like on holidays too, right? With like after Monday holiday, and I don't know when the pickup is in this particular part of town.
When it's curbside pickup, that means that they bring it to 71?
Correct.
Okay, but just so you're aware.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
And who's actually paying for the pavement, the storm drains and all that stuff
All costs will be incurred by the developer.
for the developer? And what did the fire department say? Are they happy with this side? Because I remember that was a concern early on. Is that still-
The project meets minimum RSIS required for a driveway, and similar to previous approvals. I haven't heard any negative things from the fire department. However, we can request a letter from the fire department if the council so chooses.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable.
Are there any other, Joe, maybe, are there any other potential liabilities with us granting this easement?
Not that I'm aware of.
And I guess the neighbors have been informed, or is that?
As part of the planning board process, all the neighbors within 200 feet were notified of this project.
Yeah, I'm okay with it as long as the fire department's okay.
Joe, I have a question in reference to the fire department. Where is the closest fire hydrant to this location? Is it on 71, or is there one over on the other side of Lake? Because, this is gonna go in quite a distance.
Forgive me for not knowing off the top of my head. I know there's one at the end of Park, that's across 71.
Okay,
And I do know there's one at the intersection of probably Monmouth would be the closest hydrant. I can look into that if you want to give me a second, we can come back to that. If you want to keep asking
Sure.
questions, I'll take you like 2 seconds.
sure, thanks.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stewart, did you explain to the council this was your only access to the property? You had tried other avenues?
Yes, we tried initially to come in off of 7th Avenue, and the planning board didn't really like that option. There was some neighbors in that area that really didn't like it either. The planning board asked us to approach the condo association on the corner of Route 71 and Monmouth Avenue to see if we could use their driveway to access the property, because if you can see by the plan, that driveway comes right to the property. They denied that request for access. There is also an easement along the northerly 10 feet of Lot 7, which is the property that fronts on Route 71. That is an existing right-of-way that provides access to this property. That's also the driveway of that individual's home, and their garage is located on that side, so it doesn't really work out very well to utilize that easement. So our next logical location was the existing municipal right-of-way, and that's how we have the property configured currently.
Thank you. Joe?
Mayor, it is the corner of 71 Monmouth and the corner of Park and 71, are 2 nearest hydrants.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. You have any other questions?
Chris Kempe might be able to answer this question.
What's that?
Do we have a pumper truck that could take water from the lake in the event of a
We can
fire?
draft from the lake. I don't know that particular area accessibility. The toughest part of doing that is you need to get the vehicle close enough to the lake for the hard suctions to maintain draft, which is usually within 10 feet.
Right, that's why I want the fire department to be okay with getting their apparatus in there.
I think the
I'm not
biggest,
so worried about the hydrant thing, but,
the biggest concern is to get into that back area there and actually get down there and confront it. But
I agree, thanks.
Joe, any issues with if there's an existing sanitary sewer line that's gonna run under?
No, we do have some existing utilities. If you look at the proposal that's in front of you, we do have an existing sewer here, and there is existing water as well in this area. We requested we work with the applicant to make sure that drives are going to be constructed in a fashion
It
that
doesn't
would
disturb
compromise
that.
We're also going to add a curb along the southern portion of the roadway to stabilize that pavement edge. And the applicant has designed the project to maintain essentially a sheet flow, so there's no channel flow, so we won't get any erosion. And we worked also in speaking with the environmental committee early on in the process, as the applicant noted, what we felt was the best, not a basic project. Putting the driveway down, Seventh Avenue did pose some issues with some regulatory issues. The applicant has modified his project, so he's not in any regulated areas with both improvements, and that was the goal of the environmental committee, to have that one of the objectives.
Who incurs the cost for the curbing
That you're speaking about. The applicant incurs the cost on everything in this project.
and for maintaining it as well?
Yes. Yep. This is not, the borough is not taking ownership of this driveway. There'll be no dedication after it's
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go.
Typically, with a developer creating a subdivision, just as Joe has alluded to, there's a process by which a developer would typically construct a roadway to municipal standards, to provide access to a number of properties. And at the conclusion of that process, the title to that would be turned over to the borough. It would be accepted as a public road. This is somewhat of a, in my experience, a unique arrangement where developers essentially constructing a private driveway in what is currently a public right-of-way, albeit it is not a developed right-of-way. And it just, I'm not sure that I have my arms completely around this in terms of, I understand the statements have been that the borough is assuming no responsibility in the future for any maintenance of this private drive. But I guess my question is probably best directed to the attorney. It's still public property.
It's a paper street, unimproved as public property, but once it's improved, yes, it is legally improved public property, so we would need some sort of easement, developer's agreement that runs with the land that indicates the liability for maintenance. It's not really an easement because I don't know that you can characterize it as an easement as opposed to maybe a recordable developer's agreement that indicates the maintenance of this runs with the owners of these two proposed lots. Because by allowing this driveway, at the same time, you're not precluding the borough from at some point, it's a paper street. You could come in tomorrow and decide to pave it or improve it or do whatever. Additionally, you're not conveying away the public, so you're not giving away the public rights, but until such time as the borough ever executes those public rights, which is probably never, you would have the obligations fall upon the property owner. But there are still clearly public rights that are in use in this PVC sewer line that's running in there that's separate and apart, I take it, from the sewer line servicing the two houses. So that's going to have to be defined where that responsibility, typically those things might be at the Route 71 line. If a house, your responsibility for the sewer clean out in would be defined as the street. This is a little more complicated for me to understand exactly where that property line is for purposes of responsibility for the sewer line.
And based on...
I think you would do it by a developer's agreement. I would assume that would be recordable. That would clearly convey upon them the responsibility for maintenance, liability.
Have we received something like that?
I have not. The first time I looked at this was today.
So what you're saying is it's still a public street?
It's still a paper street.
But
It's a paper street, which means it's never been
yeah, I understand.
constructed, and you would not be accepting it, so it would not be a public street, because it would not be at this time, accepted by the council, so it's a driveway. But you're not giving up the rights to, in the future, accept
Oh,
it.
so if we decided in some future council for whatever
Some
reason,
future council wants to pave this, as- hypothetically wants to make this a 33-foot road that accesses Rec Pond, yes.
all right.
You're
So it's
not,
not really, not really private, it's kind of almost like a loaner almost in a way.
probably,
Well, if I could just add, one of the reasoning behind the driveway was the regular configuration of the right-of-way, which doesn't really permit a road.
it's jagged. If you look, it looks like,
So it's only partially, it only coincides partially on the paper street.
well, the likelihood of this ever being constructed as a roadway
It's
is
never, right?
virtually nil. Partially because of probably regulatory issues, partially because it looks like, you know, probably the map line that created this or something does not line up. So you have a, what is it, about a 40-foot right-of-way that then jumps. So it would be a very odd road to construct anyway.
So because of some of the ambiguity here, so do you recommend that you or someone develops a developer's agreement to
Yeah, that could be done.
clarify some of these things so the council knows exactly what it is getting itself into and the public understands what we're doing here?
Yep, that can be done.
So you're going to draw that up?
I can do that here.
And you're
And
gonna-
I think it might be a combination of developers agreement and an easement. I'm not so sure that there's not an easement component over the right of way. You and I can work out that.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. And obviously from the, not only the easement that I had seen for the 10-foot right of way on the adjoining neighbor's property, there's always a contemplation. And Mr. Stewart also being the surveyor, having handled all of the back title, reviewing all the title, that the access to this property was over Lake Drive. So that was always a contemplated access to these properties. And then relative to it maintaining, you know, the owners of the property maintain them, you know, everything that the municipality has, never accept them, there's no responsibility for it. And then however, you want to handle the right-of-way language over there, you know, we're amenable to it.
Okay.
I think Mr. Brennan had a point.
If I could,
Well, it's on, I mean, it's.
you don't want to hear a
I'm
contrary point?
going to check with Scott. Scott, is this, I mean, it's not a normal protocol to have the.
It's not on that part of the agenda. You will have public comment as item 13.
Right, we're not taking a vote on this or anything, we're discussing it, correct?
I mean,
It's not on for action.
Correct, it's not on for action.
we could.
I just thought
Yeah, we
it
can
might be
bend,
best if there's a little give and
John,
take so that you.
we can bend the rules, you can step
That'd
forward.
be great. Hey, I'm John Brennan, I'm an attorney, my office is at 43 Main Street in Avon, and I represent Gary and Judy Scalinger, who are on 71. And I was here at the planning board meeting, I know that Ms. King was here in the audience, and Mr. Mechanical was here.
Is that mic on?
Is it on, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know what you've been told about, because I just got here, I didn't have notice, fortunately, Mr. Scalinger stopped in and called me, that's why I'm out of dress, I apologize for not being in my proper lawyer dress. I don't know what you've been told, but I can tell you a few things about this property, just to make sure that everybody understands what exactly is going on. I think you've probably been told that there's a 10-foot easement that goes across Mr. Scalinger's property. There is no enforceable 10-foot easement across Mr. Scalinger's property. That is an outright misrepresentation. That
Sorry,
easement.
John, which one is Mr. Scalinger's property? If you could point it
And
out on the map.
He's right here.
Do you place objections? I mean, that's an absolute.
I could care less whether you take objections, my opportunity to speak.
John, we're not going to argue, if you're going to be contentious, you step out right now.
I had the floor and Madam.
You have the floor because I granted it to you, but I can take it away from you as well.
That's fine. This is Scalinger's property right here,
Okay.
okay? And he actually owns both sides, all right? And they're claiming that there's a 10-foot easement, which they provided a document which purports to be an easement. That 10-foot easement is unenforceable because of a lot of different reasons dealing with the chain of title. Keep in mind that all of this.
That really hasn't been an issue. It was more about Lake Drive.
Okay, well then let's
The
talk
issue of
about
the 10-foot easement.
Let's talk about Lake Drive. Lake Drive, just so you know, the property in question, which is lot 4.02, the property in question came into existence when there was a subdivision back in 1983, which created the condominiums at Monmouth and 71. The Aherns, Ahern and Ahern Partnership, who is still the title owner of this property, okay? Mr. Stewart apparently doesn't even have a proper contract with the title owners of the property. Has it been produced to you? Has he produced to you the contract? Okay. This lot was created by way of that subdivision. They knew exactly what they were doing when they created this lot. Okay? They wanted this subdivision, and I did the title work myself. When they created this subdivision, and with all like 16 different units, the Aherns gave like 1 or 2 units to each one of their children, who then sold it out to the private market. They made a lot of money. They knew what they were doing by creating this landlocked lot. Okay? Additionally, the property, the deed, the most current deed of title for this property, lot 4.02, Ahern created, okay, prior to conveying it to Ahern and Ahern prior to the subdivision was created. And that tract of land claims that it owns the property line. You'll see these lines here that Mr. Stewart drew in, and he knows this because he knows that deed. Claims that the property ownership goes halfway out into Wreck Pond. Okay? The interesting thing about that is that Ahern, when you go back in title, Ahern, right, can only own what the predecessor in title conveyed to Ahern, right? He can't own more than that. That just makes common sense, right? You can't own more than what the person before you sold you, right? Well, when you go back in the chain of title, they don't claim to own halfway out into Wreck Pond. So when Ahern created this deed of conveyance, okay, when he assembled the lots and he created a deed of conveyance into Ahern and Ahern, he augmented his ownership by trying to project his ownership out into halfway out into Wreck Pond. Okay? Mr. Stewart apparently has a contract to purchase whatever this property is. Mr. Stewart hasn't produced either to the board, either to the planning board, or apparently to this council, what it is he thinks he's going to be buying. But if he thinks he's going to be buying what is the predecessor deed, he thinks he's going to be buying halfway out into Wreck Pond. That's really important because it deals with a couple of different issues. One, Mr. Stewart, when he was in front of the planning board, he drew this line in here. He asked the tax assessor to do a 200-foot property owners list, and he did the 200-foot property owners list from the lot lines, which did not encompass the other persons who would be affected if, in fact, the full property in question was affected. Furthermore, he didn't even do a 200-foot property owners list from where his own development was. And there's clear case law that says that you have to have 200 foot from here, okay? So all of this horse and pony show that we had last time in front of the planning board is going to go down the drain because of the lack of proper notice, okay? Additionally, I don't know what he's told you about what the Department of Transportation has done, but the Department of Transportation, he was in front of the planning board and he said, oh, it's not going to be a problem. He applied to the Department of Transportation, and they bounced for an access permit out on the 71, and they bounced his permit application because he's not the owner of the property, and in fact, they think that the owner of the property is Donald J. Ahern, which is not, it's Ahern and Ahern. And in fact, the property ownership for the entry is the Borough of Spring Lake Heights, because the Borough of Spring Lake Heights owns a 40-foot wide tract that the predecessors in title to Mr. Skellinger purchased back in like 1960 something or other. This rest of this paper street, the paper street is just something that was drawn on your tax map. And I did an Oprah request, your administrator knows this, and went in and looked at all of your maps. You don't have an official map. You have tax maps that go back a ways, Birds All had did them, and he drew in this paper street, but there's no predecessor map that reflects the paper street. And let me tell you, and Scott can tell you about paper streets. Paper streets can come into existence a couple of different ways. They can come into existence by way of a deed. For instance, the deed that Skellinger's predecessor and title conveyed here, which is why there's a job, okay? Because this is actually here. That's ownership by the Borough of Spring Lake Heights. But the paper street itself doesn't exist except on paper, and there are no rights to it, not even on paper. And the reason why that is because there's two ways that paper streets can come into existence, public streets can come into existence. Prior to the adoption of the municipal land use law, there was a thing called, what we now call the Old File Tax Map Act, when a surveyor would go out and survey a big piece of property and draw in lots and roads, and then they would record that map out in freehold. And the streets then would become publicly dedicated. And that's how it would come into existence prior to the adoption of the municipal land use law. Now, with the municipal land use law, there's subdivisions, and the subdivisions include the dedication of streets that are set forth on the subdivisions, which are then dedicated, and then they become public streets, okay? In this particular instance, there is no recorded map, and there is no recorded subdivision creating this public street, okay? So there is no public street. At best, what you got is perhaps an intent by some prior council back when to have it as a municipal right-of-way, although there's no documentation to that whatsoever, okay? So there is no public street, all right? And as a consequence, and if there was a public street, what they're asking you to do is provide, and all due respect to Scott, I disagree. I don't think that a developer's agreement is going to work. And I can tell you we'll litigate that issue. Because what you've got is you've got a public property being utilized for private interests.
So is that your major objection? You made a lot of points. Let's assume for a moment
Right.
that he actually does own the property, because if he doesn't, we would guess that he's not going to be able to develop on it. So if he owns the property...
He doesn't own the property, he has an option agreement.
Okay,
Right.
It's not an option.
let's make that assumption. Your major objection is that he's going to be using a public property for private use. Is that...
My objection is a couple of things. One is, Mr. Stewart has made misrepresentations about what his intent is, about what his needs are, okay? That's one big thing, all right? And second,
So you're saying he's
and
not trying to...
I think your problem is, respectfully, I think your problem is there's no way you get over the hurdle of providing a private interest on a public street or a public piece of property.
Are you saying there's a difference between Lake Drive in the first part and Lake Drive in the second part, like where this jagged line is?
That's right.
So the first part, you would say,
It's
does
coming off
exist by
70.
map, does exist by some sort of filed map?
It doesn't, not by file map, by deed.
By deed created a stub road. Then if that's the case, who owns, by your take, the other part of Lake Drive that would be between what's shown here as lot 402 and the lake?
Well, I would assume that he would say he owns this. Because
Okay.
he's going to claim, well, he doesn't own it yet, but he's
Well-
going to claim he's entitled to what was ultimately in the chain of title, which says halfway on his
That
record.
doesn't help you then.
It doesn't hurt me.
Because he could turn
because
around
quite
and say,
frankly-
I'll
quite
build
frankly,
a
that's-
40-foot pavement and I'll pave it for
Scott,
50 feet in and you have
Scott,
no argument.
I realize that.
I mean, I'm looking at this for 10 minutes and I can solve that problem on this part real easy.
Except for the fact that what I also said is, he doesn't have that, right? He doesn't have it.
Well, that's a title issue on his part.
Okay.
I mean, that's
And
not,
that's a title issue. That's a major
if he
title.
does, but that's not anything that, if you're saying that Lake Drive, at least for the first, I don't have to mention that, I think it's
60 feet or
60,
70
it does exist, and then presumably, from that point on, is somehow tied to 4.02 or whatever. That's
What
a
I'm
title
saying,
issue
what-
on his part. I mean, the borough doesn't review people's titles when they want to put in a driveway or a house,
Is the application here for him to be able to utilize the paper street?
The part that is shown here as the gray, color that's where it says Lake Drive, proposed paved driveway, up until the point that I assume you hit what I viewed as a lot line, is the issue. And presumably subject to regulatory issues, you could come in and say, I'm gonna pave this at 40 feet up until that point. And the borough could, I view this, and I could be totally missing this, this was presented to me just today, but the proposal is to not construct the roadway to current standards for two houses at a 33-foot cart width or 40-foot cart width for this section, and to build it as a driveway. But assuming it's a public right-of-way, they could do that as well. Except for the fact it's got this jagged design, which I'm not quite sure what you do with.
I think we've heard of that. Thank you. We're going to, Scott, you're going to council's.
Okay. I think I'm going to look to the applicant to present me what it is specifically in the form of an agreement they want, and I'll review it. At that point, it'll come up for a vote.
What about the issue of proper notice to the neighbors?
That's a planning board issue. If they didn't notice people within 200 feet, yeah, their notice would be defective. I assume if Mr. Brennan is representing this adjacent owner and they're planning on challenging it, if you have a defective notice in front of the planning board, your application is defective. And the planning board is very clearly without jurisdiction if the notice isn't met. There is an issue if the information was supplied to you from the tax assessor and you relied upon that, then you can rely upon that for purposes of notice, unless you're aware of it, that it was defective. But a typical person relies upon the list generated by the assessor's office or collector's office, and if you don't comply with that, it's defective. If you do comply with that, it's acceptable provided you are not aware of defects.
And just so the council's aware, we did receive a certified list from the tax assessor for Spring Lake Heights. We did send all the notices out. Jurisdiction was accepted by the planning board. And just for the record, Mr. Brennan was there, and he did, I'd spoken to him well before the meeting. So he was, he never raised jurisdictional issue at that stage. This is the first time I'm hearing of that.
It's an issue for the planning board, and that is part of their review. The planning board attorney reviews that the resolution will reflect the notice given to those people within 200 feet. It's certainly something that can be challenged in court, but that's not necessarily your issue.
What I would just emphasize, Scott, for your purposes, I think you need to clarify before there's any agreement to utilize a public, potentially public street for private owner purposes, what exactly the ownership is of that particular tract of land. And I use tract of land deliberately instead of using the lot, because the lot is something that does not encompass the entire tract of land according to previous deed. And I also think that the council should understand and be fully advised of what the ownership interest is of Mr. Stewart, or how it is Mr. Stewart intends to be able to take ownership of this particular tract of land, and what it is he thinks he is going to be vested with by way of whatever conveyance he's going to be receiving, so that you can have all that clarified. You certainly don't want, I can having served obviously on this council, you don't want people claiming that they own halfway down into Black Creek. That's an issue that's going to have to be clarified. And I'm telling you where it came into existence. It came into existence with the deed by Ahern.
Yeah, but that I don't think has any, that's a separate issue of what he claims by his title. I assume that the application to the planning board reflected that it was, I don't have the application in front of me, but it was signed by the owner or the contract purchaser with the owner's consent.
Except for they had the wrong owner. And respectfully, with respect to the notices, I did attempt to try to get some information about what it is they expected, he thought that he owned, and I was not allowed to ask that line of questions because of the objections of council. Had that line of questions been asked, I think it would have become perfectly clear that there was a deficient notice. But my point again is, look, Black Creek is something, everybody here knows the sensitivity, environmental sensitivity of Black Creek. Black Creek has been filled in because there's been unfiltered stormwater runoff coming out of the 6th Street outlets, coming from the north and coming from the south. And if you've ever been on Black Creek, or if you've ever spoken to anybody who lived in the area way back when, it's filled in over the last 6 decades, and that's the way it is, and it's a very sensitive area. The idea, I'm frankly shocked that the planning board and the mayor would actually even entertain anybody putting 2 houses on a particular lot right on Black Creek with the environmental sensitivity of that particular site. But be it as it may, apparently, you know, other people see it differently than I do. But what I would say,
Mr. Brennan, if you wanted to put a house there, what would you say? Say that was your property, what would you do?
if I,
wanted to put a house there, what would you
listen, Mayor, I'll
Would
answer
you be
that
shocked
question.
to put a house there?
No, I would come here after I got a condominium of 16 units by way of a subdivision where I created a landlocked lot. I would understand
You know-
what I was doing. Yeah, it's part of the record. And the law is that any contract purchaser or subsequent purchaser stands in the same feet as the person who created that problem to begin with. Their own self-created problem does not give them the right to have public property used for a private purpose.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just on the
I'm sorry, but
environmental.
you're gonna have a lot of work to do. Research this, you gotta get back to the council.
I will.
And just on the environmental issue, just real quickly, Mr. Stewart can speak to this as well. The mayor will recall, because he was at the planning board, there was an environmental impact statement submitted.
Done by Mr. Kurtz.
John, you can't keep, I'm sorry. You had the floor,
Right, we went to NJDEP on all the issues regarding this property, riparian zone, wetlands, and flood hazards. We prepared an environmental impact statement, filed it with the board, and the development as proposed does not violate or require any permits with regard to wetlands, flood hazard, or riparian zone. Also, we've agreed to treat the storm water not only from our particular property, but from adjacent properties that drain directly onto the property. So we've gone over and above our requirement to control runoff and to ensure that there's no adverse impact into Red Pond.
Let me just,
John,
you brought up a new issue.
no.
Okay, you don't want to hear about the defects of the
We
DEP
listened to you.
applications?
We're not
That's
gonna go
fine.
back and forth.
Okay,
You'll have, believe me, you'll have more opportunity.
okay.
Anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask Mr. Stewart?
Well, just,
Scott.
Scott, yeah, you know, I am, you know, I don't know what is what, but I would hope that you would research this. And, you know, if we're gonna make an agreement with that property owner, we better be sure that we're talking to the property owner. You know, because I don't know if you make an agreement with someone who's not the property owner, if that's even enforceable, so.
No,
So
now,
I'm asking you to do some homework.
Just so you know, I'm under contract with the estate of Mr. Ahern.
I understand, I want to be fair to everybody, but there's issues, we should clear the air before we,
Certainly.
so we can see what we're doing.
yeah. No, it would have to be any agreement you would have to reflect that it's being done with the property owner at the time it's executed, the one that's not.
Let me ask you this, do you think that this needs to be done by way of an ordinance?
Do I think this needs to be done by?
If you're gonna be utilizing public property for private purpose? Because clearly, I think that that's gotta be done by way of an ordinance, at best, and I don't know that you can even do it.
I don't think it's public property for private purposes. I mean, it's
Who else is it utilizing? Who else is it serving?
that would be true on it. You could say that about any dead-end street if you're the last house on the street, right?
No?
It's essentially, you're the end of the road, and your house is at the end of the road. You could say that the road leading to your house is a public.
Those roads, those streets come into existence by way of either filed map or by way of the.
No, that's not, how it came into existence is a separate question. You're mixing two issues there. Stick to one. You said a public property being used for a private purpose. A dead-end street would meet that definition. That's what this
You're
is.
developing, you're gonna be permitting a private drive over a public street, that's what you're gonna be permitting here. And I don't know that that's legal, but I do know one thing, if you do it, we'll find out.
Mr. Brett, our attorney's gonna research it, and he will get back to us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, I believe there's nothing else.
So look around.
Only round one. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
If you have, like, anything else you'd like to say.
No, I don't certainly agree with most of what Mr. Brennan has said, and my client's not made any misrepresentations, and he's a legal and rightful contract purchaser for the property. But I will reach out to your attorney so that he can discuss.
Yeah, give me a call.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening, great Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Oh, wait, Joe, is there anything else you want to add?
No, sir. No, sir.
Thank you. Professional services, 2015 RFPs. Jay, we sending those out?
Yes, Mayor, just want to bring before the council, it is that time of year as we approach the end of this year and start preparations for 2015. It has been our practice during my time here that prior to the end of the year, we would solicit proposals from various professionals, specifically legal, auditing, in the past engineering, although with the addition of Mr. May as our full-time in-house engineer, I don't believe that's necessary. But with the council's approval, we'll prepare RFPs based on prior year's requirements and get those out before the end of the month with a return date sometime just before Christmas, so we'll have it in time for reorganization discussions.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Sanitation recycling, Joe, is that your?
Mayor, if I may sit here?
Sure.
For the record. Myself and the administrator have reviewed our current calendar, and our whole goal is to try and clarify the calendar. When I first took over for Art, quite frankly, I couldn't tell you what days the program picked up because it couldn't say first and third, second and fourth, jumping around through the holidays and different things. So we sat with Jose Stevenson, our most senior member, myself and Jay, and we made some minor adjustments to the calendar. That being said, Jay, you want to continue? Sure. We looked at our garbage collection, and as everyone in town knows, Mondays and Tuesdays are our heaviest garbage pickup. Previously, our calendar had trash on Tuesday, Monday to Tuesdays. So it doesn't serve public works forces, or I think serves the town to have that heavy garbage on that day. So we looked at moving our bulk trash to the first, second, and third Thursdays. And we've also added November as a bulky trash month. Previously, we collected 11 out of 12 months of the year. We didn't do November due to leaves. But in speaking with the men, they indicated to me that what happens is December becomes a bear because of that missed month. So we thought to make pickup in December a little bit more reasonable, we would add November. Also, we decided to clarify in our leave calendar a little bit more clearly about leaves and brush. Currently, we have an issue when we do brush collection and leaf collection. People don't segregate it, and we can't suck up leaves with brush in them. It jams the machine, damages the machine. So essentially, we go out and do it anyway. So we decided to add it to the calendar and clarify it, please separate it. We're actually doing brush tomorrow, it's not on the calendar, but as many folks know, we do leaves, you accumulate brush, so it's only fitting that we do brush in November, where previously it wasn't actually on the calendar, but it was vaguely represented in some language about leaves. That's one of the changes. We're also looking at clarifying grass clippings. There's been some issues in the town with grass disposal. Grass disposal is not accepted at our facility, and it is the counties take that any grass that you need to take can be taken to their center, but it's highly recommended that people mulch and recycle their grass, so to speak. Those are, I believe to be,
Chipper, do you want to mention?
Our calendar used to speak about chipper, and when we were going over the calendar, and I spoke with the men, and I said, well, we don't use our chipper, and they said, well, since our chipper's a hardwood chipper, and it doesn't work well with vines and twigs and smaller stuff, it's actually for large diameter logs, shades and all. So we get brush, that has jams the machine up, doesn't work, so ever since we've gotten the new equipment with the chutes on it, we then go out and we used to call it chipper, it was basically brush, so there's no chipper, essentially.
Like tree branches or pruning, you know, that kind of, I'm not saying, I'm not
We
saying.
do that with brush, because our brush collection, we do our loader now.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't matter.
So it's really, put it out and collect it. If you put it out, you know, it will be collected, and it
In
allows.
other words, they're gonna, if you put out like a tree branch or a branch breaks off and you cut it and you put it out during brush day, they're gonna pick it up. And the guys are really good at that.
So, no, just gonna pick it up.
Yeah, and also, we're gonna clarify that you don't have to tie it, you don't have to have it 4-foot lengths, we can take bigger lengths. Most people see how our operation is and have adjusted how they prune accordingly and how they put stuff to the curb. Because with the ability of the machine, it's a lot more economical and feasible to do it. Just grab it, throw it in the back of the garbage truck for now.
Probably the most significant change, as Joe mentioned earlier, is the rescheduling of bulky trash collection. Previously, it was on Monday, the heaviest garbage day of the week. And as you can well imagine, most of your holidays, majority of your holidays fall on Mondays. So we had, after holidays, where it would take 3 days of trash, bulky trash and garbage to be collected. So relocating or rescheduling the bulky trash for Thursdays, rotating throughout the month, the first Thursday being the south end, north end, fairway used, seems to be a well-balanced and more efficient operation. But it is a change, and wanted to run it by the council first before we, finalize the schedule and the calendar for printing for next year.
If I may add, while we're talking about trash recycling, I'm working, I took my first few months to kind of try and analyze how our existing facility functioned, and I've gone out with my administrator to different towns, we've done some surveys of different facilities, spoken with basic DPW directors, Frank and Spring Lake and Jared Overseer and some other gentlemen. And I made some modifications, as some folks may notice down there. We feel it has a better circulation pattern. We moved the book swap over in front. Book swap is a very popular place, believe it or not. We're actually giving it a little facelift now. It gets a lot of business.
Giving Amazon a run for its money, right?
So,
Put a tip jar out.
yeah, but, so we're doing different things. I moved the recycling container up front. There was some double work I noticed the men doing. We are trying to put stuff in, common areas, leaves and brush on one side, and the other side, which is on the other side before, was on both ends of the yard, didn't work well. And I'm always open for any suggestions, anyone on the council that has any suggestions, any thoughts. I know Councilman Shul stopped down, Councilman King, King of this board, like I've seen Mayor, you down there, everybody here that I've talked to, but I'm always open for suggestions. I'm a little over this, I'm gonna end it there.
So, I think, any questions, anybody ready to move forward?
Looks good to me.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's good, efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
And also, Mayor, we took the opportunity, since Mr. May needed to be here for the Stewart matter, we thought it'd be an appropriate time to also provide a brief update on some of our capital projects that are in the works.
Yes.
Your Mayor, if I may. Alair Road Park, we're substantially complete. I have developed a punch list. There's some minor items that the contractor's gonna have to address. They were grading, seeding, a couple of the clean out caps here and there. He has modified the fence on the tennis court, on the 4-foot section. There's some other grading concerns I have. Moving on to Ocean Road Park, substantially complete. We did have an issue with the paving of the basketball court, which I will not accept at this time because of the ponding issues. I met with the tennis court coating people. They can correct the minor ponding issues that we do have, but the issue is the ambient temperature needs to be 50 degrees and rising. That being said, we're going to not do that until the spring. Play on the courts, but it won't be color coded. It would void the warranty, and we don't want to pay for something if it voids the warranty. And in the long run, we'll have a product that will have for many years.
Joe, just to clarify, that's the basketball court at Ocean Lake.
Yes.
The tennis courts and basketball at Alair were complete, striped,
Yeah,
color
okay.
coded.
Real good.
Unfortunately, not an excuse for the contractor. They did have a mechanical failure with the paving with a laser, which they pushed the light on, and it didn't serve them well. We'll be striping the parking lot tomorrow, so we will have a striped parking lot. Crosby Road, as you well all know, we had a sewer main break late in the summer, and that prompted some other investigations. We have completed the sanitary sewer investigations, and that has indicated that we have 3 other areas that are going to have to be incorporated in the repair prior to paving that roadway. We also recently had a storm drain issue on the northern side of Crosby. There is a storm drain on both sides, which is not on our sewer maps, but from speaking with some folks in the borough that are familiar with that pipe, or the existence of that pipe. The south side, we don't appear to have any problems. The north side, there is some root problems, and we are currently in the process of doing some additional investigation, doing some test pits just before we finalize those plans. They'll be going out to bid in January. We're going to have a spring construction. Some positives with that are we will have a better finished product in the sense of lawn restorations. I'm not a big fan of pouring concrete in the fall because 6 months is a good window for it to cure properly. When you do concrete in October, you put salt on it, it doesn't last. We actually had an issue on Ocean Road sidewalk for a spurt that popped and spalled.
Joe, if I may, that Crosby project was originally scheduled or intended to be a fall project this year. And that was before we encountered the sanitary sewer issue that Joe mentioned that happened in late summer, which was what prompted some further investigation. And as Joe and I discussed, the worst possible combination would be to reconstruct the road and find we have some underground utility issues. So we knew we had some, what were expected to be actually sanitary issues. We ended up with a water leak there as well. So we're probably better off going slow and, as Joe has suggested, make some utility improvements between now and early spring, and then proceed with the actual road reconstruction of Crosby, Jeanette, and Norman Terrace once the weather breaks and the paving plant's open in the spring.
Thank you, Jay. Move on to next well closure. The bid specs are prepared. We bid specs out for that in December. We anticipate them to come in between $100,000 to $125,000 to close that well. We also anticipate another $20,000 additional funds to demolish the building and build a small building as a utility shed for water and electric to serve street and park. And depending on what the borough's vision is going forward, how we want to utilize that space, the building being demolished. The reasoning, once again, behind demolishing that building, just to refresh everyone's memory, if we kept that building in place, it added significant cost to the closure of that well because they could not sit their equipment right on top of the well. They'd have to remove a portion of the roof, and it added significant cost of that project, so it was prudently, the building is in need of repair, and it didn't justify the expense. Moving further, tree preservation and park reclamation project, as I have termed it. You're all aware of the Fletcher property. We feel, I know the borough DPW guys are proud of it, I know Jay and myself are proud of it, and the environmental committee which worked are proud of that. Our plan is to move in 5 different areas and continue that sort of improvement. Clean up our healthy trees, get them back into a park setting where folks in town can use these spaces. The first area is the Grove. The second area is north of the Lair Road Park basketball court, or the western side of the Little League. The third avenue is the third property is Railroad Avenue east of the school, right behind us here.
Yes.
The fourth avenue is fourth area is west of the Ocean Road Park softball field. It's our intention to reestablish those trails along, back in that nature setting, and we'd like to clean up some of that growth that's along the western or the third base line there. It's pretty poison ivy infested, and it's become a, how do I put it politely, an area for some vagrancy and stuff like that we want to clean up. So those are the 5 areas we're focusing on. Another quick point, we are going to be putting some new fence similar to Fletcher along Ocean Road Park by the county bridge there. There's a post rail there that's deteriorated and fallen down. We're going to replace that. It's about 130 feet. And we're also looking to do the same thing. We are doing it for Black Creek and get that area beefed up down by the pump station. There was a bit of fence posts here and there, but the fence had been deteriorated and rotted out. So from the dead end all the way around, so cars can't drive in there, we'll keep cars out, and I think we'll give it a little bit more facelift. Mr. Delaney is working with me trying to accommodate that.
I'm sorry, Joe. At that part, with the pump station.
Yes.
There needs to be benches or something there, tables or something.
I'm not aware of that, but,
I think there was.
Mayor,
It'd be a good idea to maybe put a picnic bench or something, just in case anybody wants to go in there and have a look.
Yep, I know the only thing I was aware that was there is I took down the pooper scoop thing. I have ordered a new one. It was rotted out, so people put their bag in, which just go right to the ground. So we're going to make some park improvements there, and Mayor, whatever your suggestions are, we'd be happy to accommodate.
See what you think.
Just a quick follow-up on that tree reclamation project that Joe has done. It is our intent to develop, using the bid specifications that we utilized at Fletcher on the tree preservation, to identify these areas, put together a spec, and utilize the winter time when tree services are looking for business. We feel that January, February is the ideal time to get good prices. So that'll be a project very soon after. The intent is to utilize the available funding from next year's open space fund to really accomplish those projects. So we hope to have good, solid budget numbers and proposals shortly after the first of the year, so that work could proceed during the winter months.
My final, not quite my final project, discussion is our hydrant replacement project. We're going to do 5 this year. We've already purchased the hydrants, have a contract with Mark Boschek to do them. We anticipate them being done within the next 2 weeks. And those 5 areas are Central and 6th, the Fletcher Lear Road hydrant at that bump out, Park Avenue, the west end, doesn't function properly. Old Mill Road, the 500 block, or south of the existing water plant, there's a hydrant there that doesn't work, period. And we discovered one, which we moved up on this on Reeve, that's a high density area, you want to get one of those hydrants there repaired. So that's the 5 on the schedule now. We're looking, we have quite a few more to do. We're going to put the budgets together for the oncoming years and continue with that. We're currently reviewing the Bright Lane sanitary sewer issues. We've had that televised partially and are basically looking at the information, determining the limits of potential required repairs in that area.
That should keep Joe busy most of the winter.
On a quick note, we're all ready for the winter. We have all our salt, our bows are ready, our plows are ready, we have a salter on the truck already. We've got 1,100 yards of leaves collected to date. We'll be cleaning that up. Once leaves are done, we'll be running our sweep around, getting the streets nice and clean. And I really don't have anything else to add unless anybody has any questions.
I have one for you, Joe. The
Yes, sir.
Ocean Road Park,
Yes, sir.
the bathrooms,
Yes.
they done?
They're done. We have taken the toilet out for the winter because the urinal, you can't leave in because of the trap system in it. There are some punch list items which, quite frankly, I'm not happy with. Some of the cosmetic issues. He put some caulk and stuff. There's some minor issues there. The doors are on it. It's substantially complete.
Are we gonna put up markings on the door?
Yes, that's part of the punch list. But the intent of that is to have the bathroom at Lair Road, Ocean Road Park be identical.
Yeah, okay.
That's our intent when we wrote the spec, and that's what I expect before we're gonna get final better.
Okay.
Anything else, Joe?
No, sir, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point in the meeting, we have the council reports. Do you have anything to report to the public? Mr. O'Brien?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Schuler?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment that the Little League field's been relamped and shrouds have been put on the lamps new and lighting redirected. Hopefully that solves some of our problems. I'd like to mention that South Monmouth Regional Sewerage Authority has been selected as the winner of the 2014 Governor's Environmental Excellence Award. They got the award last week.
And who got that?
The South Monmouth Sewerage, which we're part of.
You're part, yes.
And I have a question for our lawyer. I received a card in the mail changing my assessment of my house, the value of my house. It was done by a clerk in Freehold. We just went through that we're going to have a company come through and do 20% of the town. In a 5-year period, the whole town would be done. I wonder if that's necessary, if we got a clerk in Freehold that can send out a reassessment.
I would assume that notice, though, has to be based upon the work done by the reassessment company.
No, not that I am aware of, because they were supposed to do 20% of the town.
You're supposed to inspect
And-
20% each year.
by section. And they can't do Shore Road and then Pitney Drive. That's a little bit stretch for 20%.
Mayor, if I may, I know that we've had a lot of discussion about the demonstration reassessment or tax assessment demonstration project, which we've commonly referred to as the Monmouth County Pilot Program for Tax Assessments. Initially, there was misunderstanding that any adjustment of property owners' assessments was related to the inspection requirement of 20% on average properties being physically inspected each year. That, I thought, was cleared up during the course of the year. It's really a separate component of the pilot project that allows the assessor, now is authorized to make changes in assessments both up or down as market requires. The 20% requirement for properties being inspected is still there, but is not directly tied to any change in the assessment.
So the person we have to see is Mitch Elias.
The assessor, and I know that the county sends out the postcard assessment information, but that's based on the information and the assessment that is placed on the property by our tax assessor.
But did our tax assessor just increase everybody by a certain percentage?
No, I don't believe so. Based on my very preliminary and brief discussions with him, is that there were areas of town that went up, areas of town that went down, areas that stayed roughly the same, based on, you know, current market conditions and the sampling of sales that take place.
And what just happened isn't related, so what happened, what Councilman is bringing up here isn't related to the program that we're all guinea pigs to.
Well, it is.
It is, or?
It is a component of the demonstration project, because now, instead of having a reassessment done every 5 or 7 years, now there will be incremental changes that the assessor is authorized to make, whether they happen on an annual basis or, you know, every 2 years. That's sort of his call.
So did Councilman Schuler, did someone come inspect your house?
No.
So what if someone comes and inspects his house next year as part of this 20%? Could his, or ours, yours, tax bill change again?
Absolutely. Every year.
But, I mean, if it can change it just based on the market values, then why are we paying a separate company? I mean, that's your point, right?
If we got somebody in Freehold that can do this by a magic ball, why are we paying
I tried to bring this up.
specifically?
My suspicion is that the information that, you're getting the card that's generated by the county, but the change in the assessment was done by the assessor based upon the contract with this company. So it goes out and
Nobody's come around to inspect.
they don't have to inspect your house to change the assessment.
Those contracts haven't been out yet. All
Yeah,
right.
essentially, the inspections are intended to confirm that the data in terms of physical improvements are in fact accurate.
I guess I shouldn't have painted the railing in front of my house.
If I can say something, Mayor, I mean, there's 10 people that I know of.
Okay.
Steve Weiss,
It's
125
a little-
10th Avenue.
A little on, but you speak.
There's 10 people that I know of that appealed their taxes,
I'm sorry.
that appealed their taxes last year,
Yeah.
myself included. And every one of us, our taxes gone up between $30,000 and $40,000. Not above what we appealed, on top of what we appealed.
After you made your appeal?
Yeah, I got the card right here if you want to see it.
No, I believe you.
You know, I mean, Mitch Elias is gonna have people down here Wednesday, he's not gonna have a very nice Thanksgiving.
No.
That's fine.
I mean, you're aware of some of the things about him.
Yes, I know.
Steve,
I mean, I've done nothing to my house.
that's why he's here.
Well, you know what, my house is 20 years old, it should depreciate, not appreciate, and the land went down. Every neighbor around me that didn't appeal, their assessment went down. And it's happened all through town. So just so the town council knows that there's something fishy going on. I know you guys can't do it, but I mean, as long as you're aware of it.
No, we're aware.
Okay.
We're aware that there's a big difference from section to section, yes.
No, not section to section, the people that appealed it, they got penalized for appealing it.
They won the appeal, in February and got the assessment raised on this last.
But didn't get it raised on the appealed assessment. They got it raised on the original assessment for 2014.
Jim, anything else?
I started.
Ms. King?
Nothing, Mayor.
Overbeck?
I think we should
I
give
guess
her
we'll drop that subject, you know how I felt about that, but anyway, I just wanted to compliment Joe, how he's been managing these improvements around town. You know, and if there were problems, he responds very promptly and to just, you know, just recognize that you've done a bad job.
Thank you. Mr. Timken?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was having a discussion with Jay, and this seems to come up every year. When we turn the clocks back, we still seem to leave the lights on at the parks excessively, and there's less and less people out at night in the parks. Well, of course, weather dependent. So I just wanted to, I guess, propose the idea that when we change the clocks, can we either cut back the amount of time the lights are on at the parks because there's less and less people playing at 9:30 at night when it's 10 degrees? Or can we turn the lights off, or whatever? I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but there's less and less people playing later and later at night during this time. So can we talk about saving some electricity and maybe turning the lights off or turning them off sooner?
Change the timer to coincide with the.
Yeah, but I still don't think they need to be on until 9:30 at night in the middle. And there was a time when we actually used to turn the lights completely off because no one's out there in the middle of the winter.
Mayor, if I may, there's currently no written calendar. Me and Jay look for certain different things, trying to understand how things got the way they are. I think it would benefit everyone if a decision is made on when we shut the bathroom down at Oak Park. You know, we try to do weather permitting, but that isn't always the best thing. Councilman Tinker has brought a good point to me when we look at doing our clock back then, we should do certain things on our borough calendar, such as light adjustments, stuff like that, because yes, you make it a day or two that is good to play tennis, but at the same time, maybe 5 to 7 days a week you're paying for lights, but nobody's playing tennis anyway. So those are the things that I think the council has to weigh, and whatever, you know, you folks decide, we can accommodate, it's on a timer, it's not difficult.
Go ahead, Judge.
I would like to see it if when we shut the bathrooms down, we turn the lights off.
Well, that would be a policy issue, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So
And that seems to be an appropriate time.
yeah. So we come up with everyone agree to a certain policy, write it in there, and that's what we'll do.
But understanding that, you know, whether, you know, we try to just, okay, we see a change in weather pattern coming, that's when we do our park closures. I would prefer to actually set a date, and if we had to do it sooner than that, fine, but whether it's nice out or not, we're doing our sprinklers, shutting down our bathrooms, because it's too easy to close your pants down.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I proposed daylight savings time, because that's always on the calendar, so it's kind of like a natural reminder. That's generally around the 1st of November and around the 5th or 7th of March. I mean, unless people want to do November 15, March 15, something that's easy to keep us on track here.
I would concur.
I agree, it's just a matter of
Yeah.
November 1, March 1, daylight savings time,
Okay.
15th, November 1st.
Daylight savings time, that's a good one.
Now, just so I'm clear, we shutting the lights off completely, or off at 6:30, off at 8?
I think the idea would be daylight savings would be when we follow that cycle for opening and closing the restrooms at the parks, as well as terminating the use of the lights for the season.
Joe?
And just to clarify, we'll prepare something, a little resolution for our next meeting so that everyone knows what it is.
Before you sit down, what is going on with the signs for the entrances and exits of town in reference to removing your cars during a snowstorm? Because last year, we had several tickets thrown out of court that we had given people because they had their cars on the street, and we don't want to go that route again. And the judge had suggested to the police department that we put up these signs.
Okay, I am not aware of that, I will address that.
How about put it in the calendar?
I don't know if that.
That doesn't,
That
that's not
doesn't
due
hold
notice?
Well, we
No?
should do it
Okay.
anyway, just because.
Well, it won't,
No, I'm not saying we do it in.
Yeah, I can definitely, whatever, I can speak with the judge and understand exactly what we would need to do to.
well, Spring Lake has it that way, okay? If you enter Spring Lake at any of the roads where you can go into town, they have a sign that says that your cars have to be off the road between a certain time.
The parking stuff.
Right, right. And since we don't have any parking ordinances anymore, which would really even be better, but if we're gonna have, you know, the cars be removed, because it makes it better for you, it makes it better for the police and everybody else, during a snowstorm or, you know, bad weather, we need to put up these signs.
Yes. Didn't we had an ordinance that you had to remove when we had a snow emergency, you had to take the car off the street.
Yeah, but it doesn't exist anymore,
Why doesn't it just?
because it was done away with back about maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Actually, we may be talking, I believe that what was eliminated was the overnight parking regulation.
Yes.
Right.
There's still the regulation.
There's a snow regulation.
It's still in
That's right.
They come out, so I just restored it.
The issue,
In case of a snow emergency, you get your car off
the
the
issue
street.
as I
It's
understood
still
it
in
was
order.
last year,
They have to plow.
the enforcement became difficult because the judge accepted the argument that there was no public notice for somebody driving into town that may not be on our, you know.
So we have to have a sign saying it.
And I-
Through snow emergencies.
Some last year with the idea they'd go up.
See, Joe,
I'll follow up on, I think that.
It's not
would make my job easier.
Talk to the judge.
I'll speak
but
with the judge. and see
it may not
what-
be date related, it might be, because because I think we like the convenience of having people, like the convenience of parking on the street, just that they have to understand that they're removing the cars.
Yes, so no parking on the road is still covered.
Right.
That's a sign that's acceptable in other
Yeah,
communities.
yeah, that's-
My
exactly.
hometown, that's what we're up on, you know.
And people can always park in our public lots too, like the community center or the parks, if they have an extra car, put it in snowstorm, right?
You can't, then you can't plow the community center too, that's.
I guess they do.
It happens, we don't encourage it.
It's not supposed to
We
happen.
might don't enforce it.
They then they can't plow them either.
I understand the people who, with the teenagers sometimes, college students or whatever.
What I have unwritten policies that we encourage Ocean Road and Lake Road as parking areas. It's used a lot, typically those areas are less used during snow events. Definitely try and look at that. But I'll get these no parking on roads, I'll cover signs up.
Okay, thanks.
Chris, do you have anything?
I think that's it, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a few notes. I don't know, I guess everyone had a chance to read those, anyone have any? The only thing I wanted to ask Jay was the South Palm service charge.
Those are the guys who got the gold star. They're raising the
Not for
prices.
billing, not for
Raising the
billing,
prices.
for something else.
Yes, Mayor,
Yeah, why we got the gold star?
we will have further discussion regarding that bill, essentially, during our budget preparation discussion.
Oh, thank you.
I know it's a big number, but it's not as bad as it is.
Okay, thank you, Jay. No ordinance introduction at this time, so we'll move to the resolutions. Now, resolution R 2014-81, forming appointment of school crossing guard, Mr. Robert A. LaFauci. I need a motion in a second.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbachev.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-182, approving the use of the community center for Girl Scout Troop 29. Need a motion in a second.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call.
I'm sorry, no, I don't even need a second.
No, Jim made the motion, I second.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbato?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-183, approving the payments for November 2014 bill list.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbato?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2014-184, appointing Public Works Department part-time probationary employee, Mr. Steve Chigno.
Julio?
Chilio, thank you. Effective 11/24, Jay? 11/24?
Yes, Mayor.
Effective 11/24. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions?
This is gonna add more flexibility to our public works? Is the general idea?
Yes.
Yes.
If I may,
We just want everybody to be clear.
yeah, it's gonna allow for me to utilize Steve as a yard attendant, and also janitorial services. We pay a pretty high bill. When I first got into Orangeville, I looked at that bill and I was surprised at the cost, and I think that we could better serve the borough. We will have somebody on call, so to speak, and also someone that will be able to monitor our yard. We incur a substantial amount of invoicing and bills for bulk garbage and stuff from people out of town. I understand we're here to serve our residents, but I don't appreciate serving the wall and the surrounding communities as their garbage out. And
So this is gonna be a money saver.
I think you're gonna find significant savings, not only in the fees we're paying for the services of cleaning, and damage to the community center, because he'll be able to inspect it on Monday mornings. Just monitoring the yard. He's a very friendly person, so it's good, he knows most of us, he lives in town.
Sure does.
And it's important that we start policing our yard in that fashion. I know the surrounding towns do, but unfortunately, everyone knows that Spring Lake doesn't have anybody out
They
there
were
at
stretched
the
thin.
yard, and they take advantage of us, so. As we may ruffle some feathers, some of that action we have to take.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony. Anything else? A roll call, Jay?
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Borbato?
Yes.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, we have the public comment section again, where you may speak on any item you'd like to step forward, give your name and address, and you may speak on any item.
I'm Elaine Islandberger, 1213 Pond Road. I'm here to invite you all to the beautification holiday tea on December 4th, 3:30 to 5:30 at the community center,
December 4th.
December 4th. Thank you.
Thank you.
But 3:30 to 5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And all of you too.
Anyone else? See no hands, I need a motion to close the public section.
Make that motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If no one has any other comments they would like to make, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.